Did you know Apple's most ambitious iPhone launch nearly turned into a multi-billion-dollar supply chain crisis? When Tim Cook stepped onto the stage in September 2017 and unveiled the iPhone X, the world believed it was witnessing the future of smartphones. A stunning edge-to-edge OLED display, the complete removal of the home button, and a revolutionary facial recognition system called Face ID. Wall Street celebrated. Technology journalists praised the design. Millions of customers immediately decided they wanted one. But behind the locked doors of Cupertino and inside the highly secure factories of Shenzhen, Apple executives were facing one of the biggest manufacturing crises in the company's history. To the outside world, Apple looks unstoppable. The company doesn't simply build smartphones, it operates one of the most sophisticated supply chains ever created. For years, Tim Cook, the operations expert who later became Apple's CEO, transformed supply chain management into one of Apple's greatest competitive advantages. Factories, suppliers, shipping partners, and warehouses operated with incredible precision. Components arrived exactly when they were needed. Finished products reached stores almost perfectly on schedule. The system was so efficient that Apple kept remarkably little inventory compared to most manufacturers. But the iPhone X was different. It wasn't simply another yearly upgrade. It was a complete redesign built to celebrate the iPhone's 10th anniversary. And in chasing the future, Apple designed a product that pushed its manufacturing network further than ever before. For several months, building the iPhone X at the required scale became one of the hardest manufacturing challenges Apple had ever faced. To understand just how serious the situation became, you first have to understand what Apple was trying to achieve. In 2017, almost no mainstream smartphone had crossed the $1,000 price point. Apple priced the iPhone X at $999. To convince customers that such a price was justified, the device couldn't simply be faster. It had to feel like something from the future. Every major component represented new technology, and every new technology created new manufacturing risks. The first challenge appeared in the display. For the first time, Apple abandoned LCD screens in favor of a custom Super Retina OLED display. OLED technology delivered richer colors, deeper blacks, and significantly better contrast. But there was one enormous problem. At the scale and quality Apple required, Samsung was effectively the only manufacturer capable of producing these advanced, flexible OLED displays. Think about that for a moment. Apple's biggest smartphone competitor had become one of the most important suppliers for its flagship device. Reports estimated Apple paid around $110 for every OLED display. If Samsung experienced production delays, Apple had very few alternatives. That alone created enormous pressure. But surprisingly, the display wasn't what nearly stopped the launch. The real crisis was hidden inside the small notch at the top of the screen. To eliminate the home button and Touch ID, Apple built the entire user experience around Face ID. Face ID depended on an incredibly sophisticated collection of sensors called the True Depth Camera System. Inside that tiny module were several precision-engineered components. Among them were two parts reportedly known within the supply chain by the codenames Romeo and Juliet. Romeo projected more than 30,000 invisible infrared dots across a person's face. Juliet captured those dots to create a detailed three-dimensional facial map. For the system to work reliably, every component had to be aligned with extraordinary precision. Even microscopic manufacturing errors could cause the entire module to fail. According to multiple supply chain reports, by the summer of 2017, just months before launch, early production yields for the True Depth system were reportedly extremely low. Some reports suggested yields briefly fell below 10%. If accurate, that meant many of the modules coming off the production line couldn't be used. Factories were producing parts, but not enough working parts. Production slowed dramatically. Finished iPhones began waiting for missing components. For perhaps the first time in years, Apple's legendary supply chain looked vulnerable. The pressure spread throughout Apple's global manufacturing network. Assembly plants couldn't finish phones. Warehouses filled with incomplete devices. The holiday shopping season was approaching rapidly. Every lost day meant potentially millions in delayed revenue. Apple's carefully engineered just-in-time manufacturing system was under immense strain. When Apple officially introduced the iPhone X in September 2017, the manufacturing bottlenecks forced an unusual decision. The iPhone 8 launched first. The iPhone X would not arrive until November. Even then, supplies were extremely limited. Shipping estimates quickly stretched to 6 or even 8 weeks. Demand massively exceeded supply. Some early buyers even resold devices online for several $1,000s. Rumors also spread that Apple had relaxed Face ID manufacturing standards to increase production. Apple strongly denied those reports. The rumors reflected just how much uncertainty surrounded the launch. Apple responded with extraordinary urgency. The company dispatched teams of engineers from Cupertino directly to supplier facilities across Taiwan and China. Many worked alongside manufacturing teams for weeks. Assembly processes were redesigned. Production equipment was refined. Manufacturing tolerances were carefully adjusted where possible. Apple invested heavily in improving laser packaging technology and expanding production capacity. Slowly, production yields improved. Factories that had struggled to manufacture working sensor modules gradually reached commercially viable levels. The crisis that had threatened the entire launch slowly came under control. In the end, the iPhone X became one of Apple's biggest commercial successes. Customers embraced Face ID. The $1,000 smartphone became the new premium standard, and competitors soon followed many of Apple's design choices. But perhaps the greatest impact wasn't the phone itself. It was the lesson Apple learned. The iPhone X exposed the risks of relying too heavily on single suppliers and highly complex manufacturing processes. In the years that followed, Apple gradually expanded manufacturing beyond China into countries such as India and Vietnam. The company also accelerated efforts to design more of its own technologies, giving it greater control over critical components and reducing long-term supply chain risk. The iPhone X didn't destroy Apple's supply chain. It exposed its greatest weakness. And in doing so, it forced the world's most powerful manufacturing machine to reinvent itself. Sometimes, the greatest challenge isn't inventing the future. It's building millions of them on time. Subscribe to Behind the Billion.